research says and what we have, tried to bring together for you. Now, what we did was there was an organization called the National Association for Gifted Children. The website is nagc.org. And I would strongly recommend all of you that if you are interested to know more about what we can do for gifted students, then I think you can visit this particular website. Very quickly, what is the definition of, what is one of the definitions of gifted students? These are typically children who have shown evidence of high achievement capability in areas such as intellectual, creative, artistic, or leadership capacity, or in specific academic fields, and who need services and activities not ordinarily provided by the school in order to fully develop their capabilities. So the first important thing that emerges here is that a gifted student doesn't need to be, it's not limited to achieving, high potential in mathematics or science or English or languages, but even a sports person can be extremely gifted. A creative person can be very gifted. So you could have gifted people across everywhere. What are some of the indicators of, and we'll discuss this during the post-didactic as to who the real gifted person is and why they are gifted. But that's the definition taken by from this organization. Now, what are the indicators to identify gifted children? First of all, gifted children are found across cultural and economic groups and also grade levels. So there could be a grade 2 student who's actually a gifted student. So it has nothing to do with what grade they are in. Here are certain indicators. We have tried to compile them into 3 categories. So they show certain kind of learning traits, which may be unusual alertness, excellent memory, unusually large vocabulary, complex sentence structuring, and they ask a lot of probing questions. So these are some of the learning traits that gifted students might display. There are also personal traits. For example, they might be highly sensitive. Gifted students are sometimes very sensitive. Their thinking is abstract, complex, yet very insightful. They may be a daydreamer, and they may even have imaginary playmates. They might be playing with a chair and a table or a pen, and they might, show these kind of so-called eccentric behavior. And they may have keen or unusual sense of humor. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, but it will give you a good idea as to how different kinds of skills are shown by, different kind of traits are shown by gifted student. In social traits, they have a desire to organize people, things, idealism and sense of justice at a very young age. They are concerned with social and political issues and injustices. So they might actually be in grade 6, but they might be giving a speech on water conservation or climate change. As we have seen recently, a lot of young people have come forward and they're talking about environment. We would have all seen social media videos on them. They are interested in experimenting and being unconventional. So these are some of the traits which will give you an idea on how you may be actually, if we are not observing these traits minutely, we may actually be missing out on identifying some of the gifted students in our school. And to be honest with you, sometimes these are also indicators where we feel that these kids are actually disrupting the normal functioning of the classroom or the school. Or they are, in fact, some of us might even think of some of these traits as requiring special help. So without understanding that these kids may actually be gifted children. So these are some of the traits, and obviously there'll be more traits that you can identify in your students. Why do we really need a separate gifted program, or why do we need to really address the needs of the gifted students? I think one of the most important criteria is that the gifted students, they lack challenge in regular teaching learning classroom. So they are not challenged enough in some of the classrooms. Now, again, let's also understand that a gifted child may not be gifted in every subject. Okay, so he might be gifted in mathematics or sports or arts or painting. Okay, but he may not be a gifted student in some other subject. His performance, maybe achievement levels may not be well. But in the particular, so if he's a gifted singer or if he's a gifted artist, then during the regular period, they might not be getting the adequate amount of challenges. So we need to challenge them further, and we need to ensure that they progress in the school. That's very important for us to do. The second important thing is that the regular B.Ed programs, the regular teacher training programs, they do not train teachers to address the needs and queries of the gifted children. So even though we feel that we are well trained, but how do we really handle gifted children and their traits? I think that is a very, very important question. And some of the teachers may not be trained to do that. So a separate program for gifted children may help in such cases, which is actually run by teachers who are trained to handle gifted children. That's very important. But we need to remember that such programs are a lot more than just a challenge for these students. So there are other reasons also, and one of the reasons which research actually tells us is that if we nurture the gifted child in the right manner, there is a huge long-term impact on their achievement. In fact, when I was reading the research, there was, in a study, there were about 2,000 kids who were gifted children who were studied on a 25-year period as to what we did. So it's a wonderful research. On a 25-year period, they were studied and their performance was studied, and a lot of them became best-selling authors. One of them actually won a field medal in mathematics. One of them was a celebrated economist, a worldwide known economist. So what happens is it's not just the school, but it's even after school, the kind of impact that will have on their overall journey. And these programs actually create that interest and attention over a period of time so that they continue to be creative. I think that's very important, and the schools need to nurture that. So that's the reason why we really need such programs. So if you want to increase the number of PhDs that your alumni earn, then the best way to start is institutionalize a gifted children program in the school. Because and also I read in the research that a large percentage of these people actually had patents on their name. So they are very creative, very innovative, and that's how you realize that their gift or their natural God-gifted talent was nurtured properly at the school level. So that's the reason why we need it. What are some of the ways that research shows what we can do? So curriculum compacting is one method. Obviously, I'm not going into the details of each program. And I would love that you could go on this website and learn more about it. But overall, what does curriculum compacting mean? That for these gifted children, you compact the curriculum in a manner so that they do not waste time on topics or subjects or competencies which they have already acquired. So what happens is that suppose a child in grade 6 has been introduced to algebra, but he has finished middle school algebra by grade 7. Then in grade 8, he does not have to go through the same routines of mastering BODMAS. I'm just giving you a simple example. And that could happen in any domain whatsoever. So when we are not allowing children to waste time on competencies that they have already developed, that is curriculum compacting. Another method is grouping, where students of who have similar gifts and similar interests, they are clubbed together in a school. So that is another form, and the grouping again has really shown positive research in all the studies. Some of the people actually have some apprehensions that grouping is not a very good idea, because that creates a negative socio-emotional impact on student. But when I read through the research, I learned that there is no evidence to this belief. This is maybe our understanding or our belief system, but research does not really support this myth that grouping is a bad idea. But the way you group and the kind of programs you provide them is something else to be seen. Pull out specialized programs also work a lot. What does that mean? Very quickly, you could have a program which runs on every Saturday for students who are gifted in music or art. And that could be across the school. It doesn't have to be class specific. So if you figure out that there are 20 students who are gifted in drawing or music, then you could have a Saturday class, a specialized program, or a summer school, a summer camp for those students who are gifted in a certain manner. The pull-out programs are again almost the same thing, but they happen during school hours. So you pull out students from across. So for example, there might be students who are exceptional at writing, and you want to give them support to become authors, let's assume. So then you can have a pull-out program for these kids across grade levels, where they can interact with existing best-selling authors. We can invite them to the school, and they learn how to write a book. So that's a pull-out program. Acceleration is another effective tool. It has been used extensively across school education. And all it means is that a student, in a very simple way, what it means is that we are making a student of class 6 attempt problems from class 8 curriculum. So we are accelerating, and the acceleration can happen in a single subject, or acceleration can happen on an overall grade level. Both accelerations are completely fine. There is no rule set by Indian Constitution that every student in school has to graduate school only when he turns 17. So if you have a student who is 14 years old, I think Balaji can always explain that later on when he talks, that even a 14-year-old student, I think, is it's allowed for him to take class 12th board exams, but we'll put that question to Balaji in a little while. And similarly, a 15-year-old can also enter university. That is called an acceleration program, and it's very effective. Some of the assessment things that we need to focus on is that these students have to be tested on higher order competencies. They get bored by easy questions. So one of the things is that the routine questions that are given to regular students, they don't like it, and that actually makes them lose interest in the subject. So unless we are assessing them on higher order competencies, they are not going to find adequate challenge, and the entire testing is going to be meaningless for them. It's just a routine. They don't even study more for it, and they just go on and take it as a matter of chance. Similarly, innovative assessment tools, for example, collaborative projects, are very good for them. Somewhere where they have to show their creativity, somewhere where they have to show. So if he's really competent in music, we will ask him to compose a new song. And that could be the assessment for that child. I think that's the important part. The pen and paper examination for regular students might not work for gifted children. I think that's very, very important. Uh, in all of this, I think, if we just look at what are the next steps, obviously, once you go through the website, you will understand that also. But I think every school needs to first define what a gifted child means for them, and then make a school wide effort to identify 10% students who may be gifted in certain areas. So, just the way in every annual day, we give awards to students who have scored above a particular percentage points. So, किसी ने 100 out of 100 ले आया या 90% ले आया, we call them on the stage and we make sure that they are felicitated. But I think it's important to also felicitate students who are gifted and maybe not scoring well. To be honest, Ramanujan did not score well. He was extremely gifted in mathematics, as we all know. I think the same can be said for Dr. Abdul Kalam Azad. He was not a gold medalist, but he was the president and one of the leading scientists of this country. And I'm very sure all of us can come up with such examples. So just celebrating marks is not enough. Celebrating individualized talent is very important. And I think that NEP also talks about it. So if you read NEP, it talks about celebrating the individuality of each student. We need to create specialized programs across subjects that allow these students to be productive and engaged critically in their work. We need to make sure that we are assessing them with the right kind of questions. And most importantly, I would suggest that we need some teachers, if not all, we need some teachers in our school who are trained to engage gifted children in the teaching learning process. So if your teacher is saying certain students are bored in his class, maybe that's the reason why they are bored, because we do not know how to engage them. So I think teacher training also needs to be looked at for gifted children in a very careful manner as to how we train some of the teachers. So that's the end of the didactic. We do address some of these topics in our Connect to Learn workshops. If you are interested, do let me know and I'll share how we are addressing these topics in some of our workshops with ICSL.